Hello, everybody. Thought I'd share a little on a script I've been working on for a map I'd like to play at some point here. And it has to do with something I think that came in later versions of the game. I think people know I've been messing around with FarmSim 15 for a little bit, so I've had to go back in time a little and refamiliarize myself with how things work then. But with 17 and on, we've had the seasons mod, and we've had a different way of how it handles swaths or windrows, if you will, of material in the map. In essence, they sit on top of whatever's underneath them, whereas kind of in the past, they used to be incorporated more in the crop model. And all that to say is I've just had to dive in and look at things a little bit differently here. But one of the things I liked in 17 that the seasons mod implemented was the idea that grass left out eventually rots. And so there was a script where I believe if you took raw grass and cut it and you didn't ted it or get it set up for hay, I think it would shrink kind of in volume overnight. And another thing that they had was when there was rainfall or hail or anything like that in the map, it would decrease whatever was on the ground, whether it was grass or hay or even the straw windrows, I think would also decrease. So I wanted to bring something similar to that kind of to Farm Sim 15 when I play this map. And this is nowhere near as good as what the Seasons mod has. It's kind of a band-aid, if you will. But I think I'll be happy with it. Basically, I got to think about what to say about this that may be of interest. Any script you make, and this one is going to be called from the map, but basically at that time, any script you have would always have a load map in it. You then, of course, would have a delete map, mouse event, key event, update, and draw maybe. And I think that's all you needed specifically. And then to make it go and to make it update and do what it needs to do, you'd have to have a add mod event listener down here. So the basics you had to have were those that I just pointed out. And then within it, that's where you do all these things. So I have some basic variables up here. Actually, I don't think I need this particular one. But basically, everything sits in a table that is a script. This is where you start the table, and then down below, you define all this. So in this particular map that I'm working on, it's going to have grass, dry grass, windrow, of course, like any others would, and wheat and barley. But I also have put in multi-fruit, so there's some oat and klee. I think that's similar to clover. Maybe that's German for clover. So I have these in the map, and so when rainfall happens, it's going to diminish these as well as just overnight, it'll diminish grass windrow in particular. Um, so in here, it's going to load certain timers. There's things I want it to do right away, which is get the specific underlying fruit numbers of these. This is how you spell them kind of in what English, we'd understand. But inside the game coding, they are identified by numbers. So in the first run, which happens down here, it only happens once. When it gets into update, it builds a table of our swaths and enables each one of them, assuming it can find it. Meaning, if they aren't registered, then it isn't going to put it in our table. And then it hits false, so it's only going to do this at once, upon load. And then there's other variables here. If it's just reduce grass, that's something that's going to happen overnight. Rain reduce, meaning it's raining or hailing, so it'll attack those. So there's some what we call some listeners that we put on here, and a listener is a type of code that the game says I'm going to wait until a certain thing happens. So for example, day change listener is when the day changes, when it goes from midnight or from 11:59 to midnight, that's a new day. So this triggers every time it's a new day. And you can also add an hour change listener, meaning it triggers every single hour in the game. And these then are defined. When you add these, you have to add some additional code, which I did down here. Day changed and hour change. So when the day changes, what I want it to do, this here is checking if we're on the server, then do this. And it's saying, yes, let's go reduce grass. And I won't belabor what this is here. This is just telling the game how much or how long, I think basically for a 2 hour period, it will rot the grass for that. So this kind of resets the timer, if you will. If it's an hour change, meaning every hour check to see if it's raining, then do damage to any types of swaths. So again, it checks to see if we're on the server. And at the end, it checks to see if it's raining. Current rain is not equal to nil, meaning there's something happening. Then, if that's the case, then it wants you to rain reduce. Sets that variable to true. And if it's no longer raining and it checks, it sets the variable to false. And where this is important, whether it's this up here or these variables down here, if we come up here to update, that's where it's going to ask what's going on. So we've already kind of looked at first run, but now if it says reduce grass or rain reduce, meaning at the end of the day or every hour that one of these triggers, then it says come and do all the stuff in here. And I got a counter going. I'm trying to help on performance a little bit. If we just do this willy-nilly, it'll really hit our FPS, and we want to try to dial that back a little bit. So it's going to run through a counter to kind of slow the process down, if you will, before it does the impact on the map. So, it's going to do that, then it'll reset the counter. But when then first it's going to find a spot to damage after the counter's through. So this here refers to a location. So it's gonna, and this is where I say it differs a little from the seasons mod. It's just gonna pick a random location on the map. And when I say random, it calls this function here, and it's got a size factor to kind of keep it in from the outer edges, but it's going to look at the terrain size. I think most of us know that a standard size terrain is 2,048 meters by 2,048 meters, basically a kilometer by kilometer. So it's going to take that and divides it by 2, because when you look for a location, you're starting in the center of the square and then you go out from that point. So you want to knock it down by 2. And so then this is picking a random location somewhere on the world and it's returning it, sending it back up here to where we asked for that value. So it gets a location, and then it's going to look at this location and it's going to create a damage area. And any of us that came through math, we know that in order to identify a particular parallelogram or rectangle, we have to have 3 points. So here's the initial point, the random point, and then out from that point, we get a damage area. And up here, this is kind of a constant defined up here. The damage area is 5 meters by 5 meters. So a 25 square meter area. I was using 1 meter by 1 meter. It wasn't really showing up very well, so I think 5, will do. So it's going to get a 5 meter square area. So that's the spot, we want to do damage to, if you will. So now that we have the location, now we're going to ask, is this just reducing grass, meaning it's a daily thing to look for, um, or is it going to be something else, meaning it's with the rain? So it should either be, the only way we can get here is if it's at the end of a day or the rainfall thing is happening. So if it's end of day and it's just reducing grass, that's going to happen here. So there's another timer thing in here for that. And then we do damage, but we use the same function, if you will, for doing damage. And this true false is just kind of a trigger. This is grass only, and false means it's every type of windrow that we have. So it plugs into our function here, the location. These are the 3 points. Even though it's x and z, maybe most of us would think of in a plot coordinates x and y. Well, think of y as the z here. So x, this is a 3 points defining it, and then we shove it into this function down here, which is do damage. If it's only grass, well, it's going to follow it up here. And the reason why I segregated for grass only is for the sake of efficiency. Here we know we only are involved with one fruit. So we identify it at the get-go, and that's all that we deal with. Whereas if it's all the windrows, well, now we have to look at the table that we made up there, and it's going to cycle through. I have a 4 next, well, there is no next, but it looks at all the windrow types in pairs in the table that we created earlier, and then for any of those that we would find at this particular location, then it's supposed to do the following. So it's looking up the particular fill type to get the fruit there. And then we got a function here. This is a giant's function. I didn't make this one, but it basically says get the fruit windrow area for this particular fruit type and windrow. And again, here we define our square or our parallelogram, if you will. Old, I think, is the number of layers in there. If you look at the old style of how windrows were done, you could do it in multiple layers. And frankly, I think in 1719 and beyond, even though it's kind of a different system, it still is somewhat layered. And so if there's any layers of this particular fruit type here, meaning it's greater than 0, then we have something to damage. So it's going to come in here. We're going to run this again. I probably don't need to run this again. I've just been experimenting and trying a number of things here. So I've been running the code a little bit different ways. I don't need this here. That's inefficient. I could use what I came up with up here to run this. But be that as it may, I have it here again. I figure out how much is there. And now what I'm trying to do is figure out the new value. So this is the number of uh, layers. I'm trying to figure out how many layers should I reduce it. And total, I don't remember what the total is. Maybe it's yeah, I just don't quite remember what total was. But I think this is the formula where I'm trying to reduce it by 1 layer. But if it happens to go below 0, then it's going to pick the value of 0. So it should never be negative, ultimately, when it comes through here. So, and this is probably not necessary for the enabled or whatever. Here's the active function that if this is updating the windrow area for the fruit type, which we have here. Here's our square to the new value. So if this particular area had a windrow value of 10, now it's 9. So it's the value would be 9, and it would update it to 9. So you'd see it shrink just slightly for that. If it's 1, then it's going to go down to 0, and the windrow will disappear entirely. So that's kind of what's going on there. And then there's something else here. If we happen to be dealing with grass, we want to get the grass growing again or tell it. I mean, there's something that happens in the older version of the game where if you have a windrow over the top of where crop grows, it seems to kill the crop. So this is helping the grass to regrow. That's kind of what this is here. So if it doesn't involve grass, then this isn't going to happen. So that's kind of what's going on with this. It's a real simple script. We only have basically 200 lines of code. So nothing too significant here. And there's maybe all kinds of other nuances we could get into here, but I'm probably boring people enough as it is. So we'll I guess the thing I wanted to show too was, a little bit of testing, and I've already been doing a fair amount of testing, and I didn't have the heart to try to record all of the time that I spent developing this code. I mean, my word, someone would have to have the patience of a saint to suffer through all that. So for testing, what I did, I could go in game and literally mow some grass areas. Like here's a huge grass area in game right here. You see kind of the dark green. I could mow all that and that'd be fun. But really to speed things up, what I did is I took, I turned on the terrain foliage paint mode and I came down in here. This is on Ode at the moment, but I would come to grass windrow, and then I believe it's key 9 or box 9. The newer versions of the Giants editor do so much better on this and identifying it. In the old days, we had to know kind of what these mean. And then I just painted it out here. So actually, that's putting even more on top of it. Maybe it's 8. I can't remember what it was. I delete some of that off. Um, Anyways, not to belabor the point, I think I have slightly more than it could be. I have a different box here for grass, but the point is to put some windrow down on the ground and to put it in several locations. Remember, the script is going to grab from random areas. So all I did was this field over here, and I think I did a little bit kind of up in this area. You can see some greenery I laid down. There's a valley in here. Maybe yeah, I guess I did it over here also, just trying to hit random areas on the map. And I also did it down in here. I think I dropped some oat windrow, and I put some barley windrow over here just to see how it would behave in game, to see whether it would work. So why don't we go in game? I'll just get it cranked up here. I'm going to have to undo all this. What I really should have done was save a backup copy so I could fiddle with the testing copy, but I didn't. So I'm going to need to undo all those things that I put in there, but that's all right. Just one of those things I probably should have done. So I'm going to crank up a new game. I'll just put on easy because we don't care. And I'll crank it up. The map here is called Glen Ellie. That's the one I've been adding stuff to. And once again, it is a MIME app. It was created by FarmerYip, and yeah, he did just a wonderful job. I spent a lot of time with it back in the day, and I used it as something I could learn on in terms of learning a little bit of modding and what have you. And I'm still learning on it. One thing I'm learning on is this right here. So I'm just making a script to impact the windrows. And I'll show you, by the way, too, where the script gets called. I'm going to change the time. So we're at 6:40 in the morning. Let's start up a rain. We'll just make it, let's make it 2 hours in duration. And then we're going to toggle flight to no HUD mode so we can kind of get up and watch it. So I'm going to go back out to this field that we were just in. Now we're sitting kind of out in the middle of it. You could see all the windrow that's there. That's why I say I could have come through here with a mower and done all this. I just opted to uh, put it on there in the map editor to kind of help save time. So we'll get up here, we'll see it a little bit, and I'm going to be fast forwarding time. We already have a rain shower kind of on the way. Let's just get it. Aha, here we are in the rain. So yeah, and of course, when it rains, things are dark. And let's just see if we can see any squares where damage is happening. And make sure I'm not kicking any errors. Nope. Just kind of slowly look around. We should start to see squares where it's doing what it should do. Least ways, I hope so. Aha, there we go. See that little square? It'll take me a little bit, but I'll get out there over it. So this is chosen totally at random. And I see another one showing up out there just to the left. As we approach it here, you can see that little square. And I think when I saved the map, it was just a single layer of grass. Oh, there's another one up there. See that square up there? So there it is, kind of down here where it was removed from the ground and the grass was left alone. Now I know that looks kind of hokey, you know, just with a square taken out kind of like that. But the reality is there would be damage from rainfall on bare grass kind of like this, or even on dry grass. So I I used this script to kind of simulate, you know, what that damage would be. So it's going to accumulate kind of over time. There'll be more and more squares that appear on here, and maybe I would point something else out kind of while I'm here. You can see some white right there, and you should be able to see some, well, you can't see the white very easily there. I wrote another script in here, which I'll describe, I think, at some point. It's a snow script. You know, those are mountains beyond. Basically, it's raining. You'll notice in here I had, yeah, I need to fix the temperature. 22 degrees is obviously, at Celsius, very warm, too warm to snow. But I mean, I think the premise here is the snow only happens kind of up on the hills, so there's only a certain there's like a line above which snow appears, and below it only rains. So, but I kind of wanted something like that in the map just for kicks. I know it was hard to have snow kind of in the Farm Sim 15 version. Um, Basically, if you wanted snow in a map, the whole map had to be dedicated to snow, and it wouldn't fall. And obviously, if I go here up here where the snow literally is, you aren't going to see snowflakes falling. So you kind of you got to suspend your imagination just a little bit. I'm going to go over to here. I think this was barley windrow. Ignore the rocks. That's another script I have going on here. I'm just going to come up. Yep, see. And this was a grass field, and for testing purposes, I just overlaid it with a single layer of barley windrow straw. And here we can see the rain is taking out barley windrow. So, I mean, obviously, we would never see a field just covered with barley windrow like this. If anything, we would see all the swaths kind of coming out the back of the combine after it's been harvested or what have you. So, if any disappeared, it would disappear out of a particular windrow. Oh, look at that. Right in front of us, another square disappeared. So again, this is just for testing purposes to see how it works. And ignore the rocks and all these objects. I'm planning to have a whole lot of fun with them once I get in game. Let me come over here to this field. The reason I want to see this is I want to see what happens with a uh, modded windrow type, if you will. So this is oat, and you know, I almost think I put this 2 layers deep. So okay, well, it appears kind of up here on the edge. It appears that there was a square taken out. So yeah, this one's going to be harder to see, but I am encouraged that it took out some. So that tells me it is working. But it's going to be hard to see with a naked eye, I'm afraid, to... Well, now look at that. Did it take a chunk out of... I almost think it did. Unless I just missed that. Let me get down here. That almost looks a little bit lower right here, so maybe it took a hunk out here. It's either that or I missed it in the editor. But I have tested it before. Yeah, I think here's a spot. Oh, you can just barely see that. I think there's a square right here, right dead ahead. I'm standing right on the edge of it, right here, that was taken out, but you can just barely see it. Yeah, I probably should remove this second layer before doing it here just to prove that it works. If it's only a single layer, I mean, it's just obvious, you know, when it disappears, it makes it pretty evident kind of where it took it out. But the script is designed to only take out a single layer. So in order to take it all the way out, I mean, it would have to be very lucky and hit the same place twice so that it removed both layers and took it all the way to the soil. Well, I think, like I say, I didn't want to bore anybody by forcing them through the creation of a script. But trust me, there's a lot of back and forth between the script and the game and making sure the game is talking to the script and what have you. But it appears that it's working. Oh, and there's another square out down there. There's that one up there. So yeah, I'm pleased. It appears it's working kind of as intended, so now I need to go fix the map and uh, fix it in the editor. There was one other thing I was going to show. You could make a standalone script for something like this. Here's the script again. What I chose to do, this is the maps mod description file. I added it in the map and I'm calling it as a map source file. So you call it in extra source files and then it activates this particular script. So that's swath Lua over here. Ignore swath area event. I was thinking of doing it similar to, like you see over here, I'm looking at the forage wagon area event, forage wagon. There's any number of things a person consults, when you make a script or when you do any modding. And first of all is to look at what the giants did. So they wrote the forage wagon script, the forage wagon area event. And the reason I looked at this is, when you have a forage wagon, it is picking up windrows off the ground. And what I'm trying to do with my swath script is to remove windrows off the ground. So I was very interested in seeing how the Giants did it over here so that I could try to duplicate something for my purposes over here. So, and then there were several other scripts that I looked at too, not all of which are even on here. Anyway, that's kind of a script I've been working on. I don't know if that's of use to anybody that would hear this as you would try your hand at writing your own Lewis scripts. Best of luck if that's what you're trying to do. But just thought I would share a little bit from a modding perspective of trying to eliminate swaths, whether it's rot after a day or from rainfall. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye bye for now.